So, welcome to another episode of Healing Money Talks. My name is Emma Lucy Wall, and as always, I invite you to put your phone on airplane mode. Maybe put the kettle on, make yourself a nice warm drink, and find a comfortable corner to sit and deeply listen to the conversation that's about to unfold. You never know what you might hear. So, my guest today is Melissa Butler. Melissa is a writer and educator and founder of Reimagining Project. She helps people design for curious, joyful, deeply rooted learning and living. She lives in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in the USA, where her work centers around practices for slowing down and noticing more. Melissa and I met through the work of Sarah McCrum on her Thank You Money course, and I am so grateful, Melissa, for you joining me today.
I'm happy to be here. This is a delight.
For both of us, thank you. So I love that thing that you say in your bio. Her work centers around practices for slowing down and noticing more. Do you want to just tell our listeners a little bit more about what that means?
Hmm, sure. Um, it it means a lot of things, and I love learning what it means to different people. For me, it feels like my whole life has been uh, around noticing and appreciating small things. When I was a very little girl, I would hide under tables watching people's feet. I would watch Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood and collect buttons and other small things. And I've, through my 23 years as a public school teacher, played with children around small objects and ways to notice them and grow, inquiry projects for their learning. And now I do that noticing work with adults as well as children. And there's something about holding something small in your hand and practicing ways to notice and notice and notice that allows us to notice layers in ourselves, our thoughts, our feelings, our ways of being, that brings us to new places and new opportunities, most of which are already here. We just don't see them.
That's so lovely. And so So you talk about the about adults because obviously we're in this state of great flux at the moment across the planet. Are you finding that there are more people who are drawn to the work that you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a deeper listening right now for a lot of people who are speaking about slowing down, who are taking us out into nature, right? Realizing the connectedness of all of us. There's a deeper listening, I think, for appreciation of small things because you might be in a one bedroom apartment and be working from home and have three small children and you're pulled in all these directions, and yet one moment between your son and yourself or your cat, and a shadow on a wall is something that I think more people are finding. Oh, I can take a moment to appreciate that as a way to be grounded and more present in their other work. So yes, I think there's a deeper listening. I also, uh, since COVID, my work with people has shifted, like with all of us. So
Yes.
primarily I was going into schools and into learning organizations and facilitating workshops and very hands-on with practitioners. My work now has shifted through a lot of screen work and has shifted to working with a lot more families and to see the realities of what families are going through, and how a practice of slowing down is exactly what they want. And when they can realize that, oh, I can do that. That doesn't take any more time. It's not like slowing down requires you to have 2 more hours in the day that you don't have the luxury of having. Slowing down is not romantic. Slowing down is not luxurious. It is very practical and ordinary and accessible. And once people see that, they're like, oh, yeah, give me more of that.
Yeah. As one who's chasing around at the moment, getting all of the summit together, I'm thinking I could do with some of that. I know when I first met you, encountered you as part of Sarah's work,
Hmm.
you were talking about relaxation because that's a big part of how she comes to money and to our relationships with money, which is actually just the kind of that's the surface, I think. But do you want to talk a bit, because that really struck me when I first met you, was how much you'd enjoyed that process.
Hmm. You mean speak about that initial experience with Sarah's work?
Yeah, and
Yeah,
relaxation specifically.
relaxation. It's funny, I don't remember saying that, but I'm sure I did. Um, yeah, there's something about Sarah's work that I'm still in the process, right? We're still learning together, but it feels like such an essential missing piece in what I was doing.
Mhm.
And the relaxation exercises, I do her activations every morning. I do the morning and evening grounding. There's a groundedness in that relaxation that I didn't have as part of my daily practice before. So I may have had the ideas of money is energy and input, output, and flow and generosity. Like I had those ideas, but they were just here.
Yeah,
And the relaxation is embodied, and like Sarah would say, it's bigger than that. The multidimensional space that is opened up when we get out of our minds and may relax in our bodies and then open up to deeper connections beyond any senses that we might have a name for.
yeah.
It's that space that is so beautifully, beautifully profound. And, and again, it can sound romantic, it can sound luxurious. It's really not. It's a discipline, it's a practice, it's free, it's accessible for all of us, you
Yeah.
know? And I think Sarah's practice, she's very good at reminding us about the discipline and the practice of it. Um,
Mm.
yeah, I don't think I can even hear that word relax in the same way again. I'm
Oh,
sure you.
really? Because it doesn't feel relaxed? Why?
No, because it's so much more profound than that word. Is you
Right. Yeah.
how
It's not.
popular culture talks about it, it's like, oh, relax. You know,
Yes. Oh, go and get yourself a glass of wine or sit in front of the telly. That's
exactly.
not relaxation, is it?
Right. Yeah. It's like relax. It takes you out of consciousness like the wine would do, or television or whatnot. And not that I mean, all of those things have a place and there's no judgment. If you want to watch the Great British Baking Show, for example, that we were talking about. However, that relaxing is it's bigger. It expands. It doesn't take you away.
Well, one of the things that Sarah talks about with the relaxation that I have really came to appreciate with it is that it's the release in the relaxation. We literally release down to a cellular, molecular, atomic level and
Mm.
release all the old energy that's not serving us, because there's all this new energy that wants to come in, but if it's blocked by all the old stuff, it's never going to get in. So
Mhm.
I love that, making space for an energetic upgrade, really.
Absolutely. And to recognize, I mean, in that to recognize that when feelings of maybe you might name them fear, maybe you might name them worry, maybe you might name them anger or whatnot, that they're leaving. They're
Yeah.
being released. And that small thing is so
Mhm.
big,
That
right?
small thing is huge.
It's huge. Just to be in the minute of feeling like, I'm a writer, so I have moments of significant self-doubt, and it really does just come on through. And it's like, oh, and I just will sit, relax, and say, thank you for passing through,
Yeah,
and then it really does.
absolutely. So what would you say to our listeners? What would you recommend to them as a if they wanted to change their lives and have a more, maybe slightly more easeful relationship with themselves, with money, with abundance, what would you suggest they might do?
Hmm. So much of my work, it is to look at the person and to be in energy with them, because every the it's like, my experience is with young children and watching them learn, and it's always like you watch the play and then you figure out the one thing to nudge. And I feel like with adults too, that question um, would be very different depending on the person. That said, I think simply thinking about the word notice,
Hmm.
what does that mean to you? What do you notice? What do you think you're doing when you notice? When you are noticing, do you ever notice yourself noticing? And when you notice yourself noticing, what do you notice of the lens that you use for noticing? I think there's a playful space simply in uh, starting to bring awareness to what you think that word means, what you think your practice might be, that honors wherever you are, that lets whatever you feel and think about that word and that practice be fine and right, and then invites more questions, because that's the work. Whether, I do a lot of work with buttons, so like, what does it mean to notice a button? You see the button, you already have a name for it, you already think you know it. How do you notice in a way that lets you not know the button? And how do you notice the button in a way that lets you practice not knowing yourself as you notice that button? And there's endless exercises around noticing a button. The same thing goes for, you and the toast in your kitchen or whatnot. But I think actually noticing what notice means, as if you're noticing a button, might be a way that may be way too cerebral for some people, and it might not be, if it's not engaging, then find something else that you want to wonder about and, see your way in.
It doesn't actually sound cerebral to me. It sounds energetic, and I love the way you use the word awareness,
Mm,
which is another word for consciousness. But I find the word consciousness can be a bit triggering for some people. They're like,
yeah.
well, what does that mean? But it is simply bringing our conscious attention to whatever it is that we're doing in any given moment, and that's the place from which we begin to create the lives that we're actually looking for. There's so much unconscious, we just feel like we're being knocked around by life. But it's when we bring that, is that fair? Would your noticing of a button, would you expand that up into noticing other parts of life?
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually just finished a book. It's not published yet, but it takes you from the smallest thing and it expands. Here's the thing, it's always small though. Everything small is big, is immense. Everything immense is small. There's infinity in that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's another way to play. Like you think this huge problem, this huge like context of the world right now. How
Yeah.
do you imagine that in a as small and allow yourself to see the whole of it and see in and through it in the same way you could look at something very small, a small pebble, and imagine its immensity. So I think there's fluidity in that.
And that sounds like a very empowering practice to bring that the whole, because sometimes I get quite overwhelmed. I remember watching a documentary about the universe and the numbers. In about the first 10 minutes, my brain was just completely scrambled, and I thought, this is too big. I can't cope with the universe. I'm just, but that sense of bringing it all down
Mm.
and allowing it to be manageable. It's a sounds like a great way to live life, really, to not, there's so much overwhelm,
Mhm.
and maybe that's part of the gift of COVID, actually. This,
Mm.
we're sat in our homes. This has been a very uncomplicated business on a Sunday afternoon for me, Sunday morning for Melissa. Just get on a little Zoom call.
Sure.
We're over the other side of the world to one another, and I think there is definitely something going on in the world that's making it
Mm.
just a little bit more manageable for us all,
Mhm. Mhm.
in spite of all that sense of feeling a bit imprisoned, which a lot of us are as well. Um,
Mhm.
but we also have this incredible freedom with our souls and with our, if we allow ourselves the gift of
Mhm.
that stillness
Yeah.
and the noticing.
And it's always there, and it's always been there. It's like this last year, it's an opportunity for a shift in perspective. So it lets you lose things and find new, and then that lets you notice and appreciate different things that have always been there. We just didn't have the constraint, the limit that was put on that then let us innovate inside a new,
Yeah.
space.
Or we were so busy rushing off to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing that we didn't allow ourselves that time. I know
Mhm.
there are places and there are homes who are suffering. I'm not saying everybody, and it's not perfect. I'm giving 10% of the profits from this summit to um, women's refuge for domestic violence, people who are escaping domestic violence. And I know that all of that is going on, but I also, the other side of that is that there seems to be a real deepening of relationships
Mhm.
in lots of families, and just taking our attention off the what's next, the scurry. We're just coming much more into the present moment, which is a small thing as well and a huge thing all at the same time.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's part of, I think that's part of the of Sarah's, the activations, is the real presence
Mm.
that her work brings.
Mhm. Absolutely. Mhm. The groundedness that, I think often of that toy that she talks about, is like that if you're centered and grounded, there's a pull up and a pull down, and
Mm.
that don't let yourself get all the way up here, which I used to, and you don't let yourself, not be in conversation.
Yeah, and be open to these other things that are going on around in the ether.
Mhm. Mhm.
Before we start the interview, we invite everybody in, because energy is not something that's contained, which is beautiful. We're energetic beings here, and we're not just constrained by these by the four walls that we're sitting in.
Mhm.
We're very much in connection and really feel the people who are listening to us as we're speaking.
Mhm. Yes.
So what age of children were you mostly working with when you were in the public sector?
And I specialize in early childhood, so children ages 3 to 8.
No.
Um, yeah, and my last time I was in a classroom, I was with 5 and 6 year olds. And when I write for children now, I tend to write for 3 to 6 year olds. But I work with schools of children of many ages, um, and adults too. There's the essence of learning
Hmm.
is for all of us, whether you are 3 or 93, right? There's the spaces that we can open that allow um, people to enter as their whole selves and to notice what's right around them, an acorn, a leaf, a dust bunny, whatever, and to begin to wonder about those in relation to who they are. It's always, it's there's always that uh, space of you bring your full self, right? And you're noticing, you're wondering has to matter to you, and it needs to be in community. It's not a solitary experience. And so I think that if you think about what's essential in learning, um, it might look a little different with a 3 year old, but it's still essentially the same.
And are you finding adults learning more willing to learn at the moment, more inquiring than they might have been pre-COVID? Is there opening up at all?
I don't know. Maybe I don't think about. I don't know. I've never thought of it that way. I find people are almost always open to learning about learning, as long as there is a space created, for that. So, um, with educators in particular, often there aren't spaces for them to be their full selves and have time to reflect with each other and think about their practice. They're always willing. And maybe now especially would be willing to have some honored time to be fully human. um I mean, I think that would be true for all adults, but I
Well,
don't.
that's encouraging. I always think of adults as thinking that they know it all and that they don't need to have you. You must be a wonderful educator and facilitator to give them that space to explore.
Well, I mean we haven't talked about that yet, but I think it's all about expanding not knowing. That's the whole
Mm.
point of it all, maybe, is that in the noticing, how do you not know, right? That when you can get into that space of not knowing, that's when at a human level you can drop your identities, you drop your way of saying I am this or that. If when you start a space with the expectation that it is about not knowing, it's much easier to not know, because
Yeah.
the only reason why knowing is important, and it is often important in schools for children, is because you have a point system, or you
Yeah.
have a grade system, or you say you raised your hand first. There's certain constructs of intelligence, certain constructs of knowledge, certain constructs of right and wrong, good and bad, faster is better. All of those discourses, ways of being, are what make knowing important. So any one of us could go into a space that was based on knowing as important. And then, of course, we're going to want to know, because we have to know in order to survive in that system. If we're in a space where not knowing is valued, oh, well, that just feels so much better. Because now I get to not know, I get to be my full self, I get to find more questions, and I'm cool. because this whole space is about not knowing. So like you actually get, cultural capital, you get more points for not knowing. So it really is a shift of just like wherever you are, just creating the space. Here we value not knowing. And then here are some ways to not know. Most people relax right into that.
I can feel as you're speaking, your energy really shifted around starting to talk about that, because I guess school, and it feels to me like education's going to have to change in the next little while. There's a much bigger conversation, but um, yeah, I don't think we can carry on doing what we've been doing.
No. I mean, there have been people working to shift learning in the way that, we're talking about now for centuries. This is not new. Um, at what point are our systems going to break to the point where more of this rushes in? And I think we're getting there.
Yeah.
I think it's very clear how this idea of people who want to go back to normal, what is normal, and why would you want to go back to a system that was not serving all children?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So,
It was a very divisive.
yeah, and
And
it's no.
over here we've got public exams are being cancelled, and then where this right wrong is just becomes kind of irrelevant anyway, because what does it mean now to have these exam results and these stars and letters beside your name? It's all it does feel like the whole world has kind of been thrown up in the air.
Yeah.
We're waiting to see where it's all going to land. And like you, I don't think it's going to go back to normal. I think back to normal has gone. That ship has sailed.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have a new normal, or a new abnormal, as one of my friends calls
Right.
it.
Like yeah, what's the benefit of that? I mean, that's another word. Like, let's just, I think that we can approach words and their ideas in the same way we approach a button. Like, let's just wonder about that word for a while. Let's notice how it's used, who uses it, in what ways.
Well, abnormal.
Normal
Or
or
normal.
abnormal. I mean, any word.
Yeah.
Right. We can do that same noticing around. And it helps us see, because a lot of the words that we use all the time they create realities, they create ideas, and systems are on those words. And if we just use them as if we all agree on their meaning, and it's been centuries since we've noticed them, that's how things and certain unjust systems get entrenched, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it creates a lot of judgment. I've got a bit of a beef with the word woo that people use around the sort of work that we do, which is just looking at stuff a bit differently,
Yeah.
inviting in the notion that we might not be, that what we experience with our five physical senses is not all that there is.
Yeah.
Um, and I know that we're on a course as well as Thank You Money. Melissa and I are both on the leading edge, which
Yeah.
puts us out. We're making a bit of a statement that we're looking at the world slightly differently, and who knows where the leading edge is going to. There are a few people on the leading edge in various. There are various pockets around the world, I think, of people who are just exploring different different ways of doing things, like Galileo did back in the 1500s.
Yeah. Oh, and it's such a gift. It's the relationships of the leading edge that I'm so grateful for. Like getting to know you, and I know other people that you've interviewed. I also have gotten to know, and it is there's a beautiful web, powerful web of people doing work, and I'm going to look up. That's I thank you for bringing my attention to that word woo. It is used. I hear it used. I want to look it up and its history. And it's like, by using that word, you get to say wrong, right.
Yeah.
out,
Yeah.
and then you get to dismiss it. And so that it's actually a way of, don't notice this, don't think about this.
Yeah. And
Um,
I've noticed Clubhouse is the big, this big communication app thing. And I've been in quite a few rooms where some people who have spiritual businesses are using that word to describe their practices and to describe their businesses. And I actually opened a room one day saying, let's take the woo out of spiritual business. Nobody came, but never mind. They might another time. But I think it's really important now that as we're at this incredible crossroads and we are looking at different ways of being and
mhm.
experiencing, that we step into our full power and that we don't use language. Words make worlds, and
Yeah,
words can be incredibly powerful and create these divisions that are not going to be very helpful to us as
right.
we move forward. I've never heard Sarah say woo.
No, but also it's like, yes, and also not dismissing someone who uses a word differently. As you know, we also have a history of co-opting words playfully. Like, it's all about play. To me,
Yeah.
everything, it's about appreciating the small things and delighting in what we can create and being playful. And being playful means shifting our perspective, being wrong, flipping things. So if someone is playing with that word, woo, might be bringing in an audience that you, who doesn't use that word, doesn't bring in. And
Yeah.
so they might be bringing in, and they might actually be doing powerful work. And so I think it's is as much as we take seriously our words,
Yeah.
it's also we don't take ourselves too seriously, and we always let ourselves be wrong. I think the most important thing we can do is like, I'm wrong
Yeah.
all the time, and letting our perspectives shift, and not, we don't, the last thing we want to do is dismiss so someone, um because we don't want, something. So anyway,
Yeah.
um yeah, let's this Clubhouse, I don't know about it. I've heard a little bit. I'm always like a little behind the.
It's an audio. It's just. I'll very quickly talk about it. It's just a voice thing. So people go in. So what I like about it is that there's more energy transmission than there is on something like Instagram, where it's all just pictures and words. You can actually hear people's voices. You don't see. It's not video. So you just go into rooms and they have stages and they invite people up to speak. I mean, some of the rooms are huge. I have heard a multitude of things in there. I mean, I think you can get anything you want to talk about it, and it depends who you follow. But anyway, um, we are coming towards the end of our time together, Melissa. And just before we go, I know you have a very generous offer that you're making to our listeners. So would you like to just quickly talk about what that is?
Sure. I work with organizations, and I also work one-on-one with clients. Uh, Whether you are a business leader or have a family, whatever your needs are, your interests are, I do one-on-one consultations. And so any of your viewers, Emma, are welcome to have a 10% discount, just by reaching out and letting me know that they attended this summit. And yeah, I'm happy to be part of this. And this conversation was lovely. And I've imagined the many people on the listening end. And even if you aren't interested in one-on-one consultations, I'm always really delighted to hear from people about their experience with noticing and how that word matters to them, or their experiences with learning. So please, I know my website and email are somewhere in the
They are
in
somewhere.
this
Yes, they will.
packet. And I love connecting with people from different parts of the world. So please reach out if you want to have a conversation.
Lovely. Thank you so much for that generosity and what you say. When when your interest is piqued by some of these conversations, the more of us who have these conversations and have them feeling safe and heard and like we're not woo or that
Yeah.
we are woo and we're happy to be woo or whatever it is. But yes, Melissa, as you can hear, is a beautiful light soul, and I love your gentleness that you bring to everything and
Mm.
your expansiveness. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you,
And
Emma.
I'll see you on the other side.
Yeah, I'll see you soon.